Hello and welcome to the developer meeting this week. The agenda for today is, as ever, we do an introduction round. Then I will give some short updates about what's currently on our plate and what we're looking for. Then R116 Solutions will do a showcase on their solution based on our platform. And after that, we will have a time for an open discussion and also to maybe dive into some things that you are looking for or wondering why. So I will start the introduction round right now, and I will start with Alexander. So simply state your name, where you're from, and what's your role if you're a volunteer or working for a solution partner or something.
Okay, so my name is Alexander Vidakovic. I'm currently based in Portugal, actually for 7 years already. Originally, I'm from Germany, although I have to state I'm a technical German. So most of the time I had a passport from Yugoslavia, so my roots are from the Balkans. And my affiliation here with the Mifos project is through Robert's company. So I'm a developer, so I'm paid, I'm not a volunteer, just to state that. And I'm hacking around the Mifos platform now for a little bit more than 2 months and still finding out new things.
Good. Thank you. So Bonifaz, you're the next one. You're unmuted yourself, so maybe you need to unmute you, so that we can hear you, Bonifaz.
Yeah, okay. I've seen it. I'm Boniface from Kenya. I'm a volunteer.
Nice. Welcome.
Okay.
Dana.
Hello. Oops, I'm muted. No, not. Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Harp. I'm calling in today from Belize, where it's my home base, and I handle the strategic initiatives for the Mifos community. And I listen in on these meetings because I learn a lot from all you guys. So thank you.
Thank you and welcome. Dixon, it's your turn now.
Hello, I'm Jeroge, volunteer from Kenya.
Hey, hope you're doing good.
I'm great.
That's nice.
Yeah.
So Peter.
Hi everyone, I'm Peter. I'm a new volunteer. I just joined this last month. I'm from Israel. Also as a programmist and an economist, microfinancing is something that interests me. So I wanted to volunteer so I could be more into the workings and the dealings around microfinance along with software.
Yeah, so welcome on board.
Thank you.
Robert?
Yeah, my name is Robert, dialing in from Uganda, and I'll tell you a little bit more about myself when my time comes to go through a presentation with R116. With me here, the same room is Joseph, so maybe Joseph can introduce himself.
Hi everyone, my name is Joseph, calling in from Uganda, working with R116 on the Mifos platform.
Okay, welcome you both. Sam?
Yeah, so hello everyone. My name is Sam. I'm calling from a PCG and partner from Cambodia. And we are a consulting company specialized in financial consulting. My background is finance and accounting background, and I also have been working in the bank and MFI sector for 7 years, something like that. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey. Troy, it's your turn.
Hello everyone, my name is Troy Borja from the Philippines. My company is Schema Computer Solutions Corp. We're new here and we hope to be able to help implement Mifos X in the Philippines.
Nice. So welcome. So as long as Ishan is dialing in, I would like to say hello to Ed.
Oh, morning, Marcus. This is Ed. I'm calling in from California today. I help run our community programs at the Mifos Initiative.
Nice. And last but not least, Ishan. It's our
everyone.
It's our
I was a
introduction.
GSOC aspirant this year.
Yeah. Okay. So once we're finished our introduction round, I will now go to the status updates. So we introduced a new page on our wiki slide, which is called Mifos Developer Zone. And it will be the place where we can find all things related to development. And in the future, it will replace all other spread around documentations and how-tos that we currently have on different places. And if you like to take a look at it, then you could simply follow the link. I will send around the slides after we're done here. And just to give you a simple overview, so what we currently have is we have some build instructions, also some prerequisites. Then we have a short look at the current or the upcoming development process, then a pretty simple getting started guide. We also have a how to contribute, so that you could simply follow some simple steps to really get into what we're looking for and how this is done. Then we also provide some key design principles that we're using, and we're also explaining a bit about the CQRS pattern that we use internally, right? And also how we use it. So what is CQRS and how did we implement it into our system? And then we still have some more information like working with code and also a coding style guide, which is mainly a link to the Google Java style, because that's what we currently use and that we want everybody else to use if he contributes codes to us. I just want to use the chance here, which is typically a nice approach, right, to tell you a bit about the command handler changes we're currently doing. So we're decided to put a bit more magic into how command handlers are found. The command handler simply is a piece of code that knows, or at least handles, status updates or general write operations in our system. So if you want to know more about that, just simply read at the developer zone about the command and the query responsibility that we're currently using. And I wanted to use the chance to simply show you what we're currently doing. Right. So we've introduced a new annotation command type, which simply holds an entity and an action. So it's really, here you would define a command for a specific entity. In this case, maybe it would be client, right? And an action, something like create or update or activate or approve or something like that. And then there's another piece of code which is new introduced, which is the command handler provider. This is doing the magic in the background. So we're using Spring heavily to get all the beans that using these command type annotation, and then we simply create a mapping between entity name and action and the command handler name. And all that needs to be done is simply getting the calling get handler, and you will get the right one, or it will throw an exception once it's not supported because you threw in a entity and an action which is already not really registered to something. And to simply show the usage, as you can see here, the only thing you need to do is the create client command handler already exists. So the only thing we need to do here was simply adding a command type for entity and client and action create. So pretty straightforward. And these are changes that will come in or are already in our code base. So if you start creating new command handlers, please use this way, right? And we're currently also working on a way how we can simplify the usage of the command wrapper, which currently is pretty also a lot of spaghetti code, right? And that's something we definitely want to change so that's easier for somebody to create new commands. Currently, you need to do a lot of things like, let me show you some bits and pieces here, right? So in principle, right now, if you want to introduce, sure, Ishan, I can also try to explain what autowire and transactional means, right? So currently, if you introduce a new command, then you need to put in your code somewhere here in this little small if-else block logic. And we're currently working on replacing all that so that we're simply, at the end of the day, simply would only call the provider, right, which is already prepared here. So this command handler provider get handler would simply use the entity name and the action name. So just to answer your question, Ishan, AutoWire is an annotation that is used internally by the Spring framework that we use, and it simply makes sure that all classes or interfaces, dependencies you're asking for here are provided by the internal framework. So we do not need to have any new statements here. We simply rely on Spring, and AutoWire simply takes all beans that it knows that fits this name or fits this specification and simply add it for us. And transactional covers the transactional behavior against the database. So if something will fail, then the system automatically will do a rollback. And in the same case, every transactional method is part of one huge transaction. So if you do multiple changes and one of these changes failed, then all the transaction is rolled back. So that's mainly the point of transactional. So did this answered? Oh, okay, you got it. Nice. Okay, so let's switch back to the nice presentation. And I simply have two announcements today. So the release 1503.1, which is a service pack release that contains some new features, but also some bug fixes, will come the next few days. So we're preparing it for Friday or Monday, Tuesday. And then it will be available for download and you all can check it out. So if you're a developer, you typically, hopefully will pull more often than once a month, right? So you will have most of those changes already in your system. This is more for users or partners that simply rely on platform releases. So the next one would be in a few days. Sorry. The second thing that I just wanted to announce is that we're providing a new contribution license agreement. It's not really that something has changed. It's simply a bit more clearer to state what we talked about. The old one was a bit strange to read, right? And so we simply decided to restructure it a bit and give it a bit more clarity so that's pretty simple to understand and to read. And we expect every volunteer to sign these contribution license agreements. So if you already have signed for the old one, you do not need to reassign now, right? But if you did not assign or agreed in this case to the license agreement, then please do it now so that we at least can be sure that everything is working out fine. So any questions so far? So I'm unmuted you all. Okay, so does it sound like, so I will hand over, huh? Okay, so I will hand over to Robert so he can start his presentation and demoing of their solution.
Hi, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I hope the rest is able to see. The rest are able to see my screen as well. Well, my name is Robert, and R116 Solutions Limited is a company that started in 2010, and we do a range of other things currently. We have been associated with an organization called Finem. Finem is a non-for-profit organization that is doing a lot of community work in terms of giving out financial services to the disabled, and especially targeting more women who can develop a small-scale businesses. And they started actually as SEDA, and basically the company is co-founded by Esther Hare and Amaropa Foundation in CH, which is Switzerland. So what happens is they pull together their personal money from their personal savings, and then they inject into the business, while there's a team in Uganda who runs this. So Finem started using Mifos system. Actually, one of the first Mifos system in 2010. So since then, we've been helping them with the IT work, including, deploying Mifos and the support and stuff like that. It was until last year that they decided to scale. And part of the reasons why they wanted to scale is Mifos, the original version, was not actually giving them the flexibility in so many other areas. So they contacted me and they asked me whether I could be able to put together a team that can do that. And what I decided to do was like, yes, I can do that. So I started lobbying out for contributors, but also developers who would sacrifice their time. And I got a few guys from India whom I negotiated with them to do this project at half rate. And they accepted, and we started working with them to some point. Then we had another developer rolled in from Ukraine who was able to also participate in the project. And the second last developer, actually the last developer to join is Alexandra, who is actually on this call. My major role has been to really coordinate and also correlate what is going on in regards to the development processes. We're using agile practice to do it, and we're using Jira to manage the issues, the stories, the epics, and the rest of other things. And we're using Git repository for our repo, and we're using Snap CI, which is an open source, partly open source commercial developed by ThoughtWorks, to manage our pipeline and deployment. And we're using Amazon Web Service servers to deploy. So I got Alexander, who has become a full-time developer on the project, accepting to take half pay. The money of which is being contributed actually by Amaropa Foundation to help bring this project to life. So that is the history of what is going on. And along the way, the last 3 weeks, we had a UX and an XD who came in and helped us to transform the UI into something that they wanted. So the primary strength of this was to have a customized front-end system for Finem, capturing the key important features that they would love to see, but also to transform the UI to make it a little bit more user-friendly. In the process, they wanted very much to have a responsive web design. As a result, we had to bring in a UX to do the visual design, and then we had also another UI developer who came and transformed. So the system is responsive and targeting screens from iPad and all tablet of screen sizes and above. We are not targeting smartphones or any devices smaller than iPad Mini 2.0. So as we speak right now, we are actually done with all the key features. We are just simply trying to put final touches here and there. And the final roll-off for the system for the first version to be into production is expected to be the 1st of July. In the meantime, we are importing their data into the new system so that by the whole of month of June is going to be used in parallel to the old system with their data intact. And then come 1st of July, we intend to phase off the old Mifos, and then they can continue with the new Mifos. Some of the things that the old Mifos was not very strong in was the aspect of accounting, which we handled it very, very well. So without waste of any time, I'm going to run through this for the next maybe 5 to 10 minutes just to show you what we have in the functional aspect. Then we also have the last part of the discussion where Alexandra is going to join in to actually talk the technical aspect. We do also have feedback that we would like to give to the contributors of Mifos X platform in general, and Alexandra will be speaking about that. Alexandra also will be speaking about the tech stacks and the choices that we have used, and also the DevOps aspect. Yeah, so just let me just run through this quickly, and so this is, as you can see, the screen, the login screen for the new Mifos for Finem. I'm just simply going to log in quickly and then just go through some of the key features that we have. One of the aspects that Finem wanted, I hope you guys are still seeing my screen. Marcos, are you there?
Yes, sorry, I was unmuted. We all
Yeah,
see your screen pretty nice.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah. So Finem strongly suggested the need to have a dashboard in the new system. As you can see, it's one of the things that we did not have on the last Mifos, I mean the previous Mifos. Finem also suggested a strong need for the accounting. So we did a tremendous job to make sure we capture at least the basic accounting accounting features that they need. Currently still on accrual accounting. So right from the time when a loan is disbursed to the time when a loan is actually paid, a loan is written off, all these aspects are supposed to affect the accounting, the general ledgers effectively to give the right reporting and the right information for them. So we spend enormous amount of time trying to understand the accounting aspect, not trying to blow ourselves out, but to take the key things that they need. So we can confidently say we fix out the accounting. And trying to do this, we ran into lots of issues. First of all, the current Mifos X API only supports a certain level of accounting. For example, things like opening balances were not there, closing, like year-end closing were not there. So we had to go into extension of the APIs to include some of the new features that Finem wants into the API. We also went into multi-currency. Is an aspect that actually was showed in Mifos X API, the version that we have. So the developers had to go deep and try to extend this so that we can have multi-currency. So those are the aspects that we dealt in the accounting. The other aspects are in terms of notifications, which are including things like follow-up reports, general notes on clients, and stuff like SMSs and email. So we actually did tremendous amount of work to make sure we include that. Of course, the rest of the things are some of the things that we're actually getting from the Mifos API. But the overall thing that we really pride ourselves in doing is the usability and the easiness for the end users. For example, when they're creating a user, the simple things that they need to go, the navigation is what we really fixed for them. We incorporated the feature for taking pictures of clients instantly using cameras, both from their iPad, tablets, computer, and attach cameras. So that feature is there. We capitalize on the aspect that everything revolves around clients, including loans and stuff like that. So we decided to make it a little bit much easier for them, where it is they just on their finger snap. And all this, we worked around making it responsive and also easy for them to navigate around. As you can see, one of the screens, like viewing the details of the client and stuff like that. We have that worked out, editing clients all up there, deactivating client and stuff like that. So those are some of the aspects where we did. The other ones are in terms of customized reporting. So there are certain aspects of reporting that they really wanted that actually we wouldn't get. As you can see, these are more reports on accounting, more than what came with the Mifos X. So we had to extend that. We did a tremendous amount of work in customizing some of their reports, like MIS reports and some statistical reports and stuff like that. So yeah, so generally speaking, this is what you see, and the easiness to search for a client. Yeah, so we did this work from mid-October to date, and we're in the final stages to just, putting the small things here and there, and then they can go into production. So this is the general overview of the journey through development of Mifos and what you see. The tech stacks and the rest of other things, I will actually hand over to Alexander to speak about it. So Alexander, please.
So Marcus, you have to give me a heads up if I'm going too technical and I'm starting to bore people. And everyone else also, please give me some feedback if you don't understand something or if I'm assuming something that is not so obvious. So first of all, hearing about the command annotation that you mentioned earlier, Marcus, I'm really happy to see that.
That's good.
Because I was already confronted with that system. I was already confronted with that part of the code, and it's really a challenge. Let's put it like that.
I would say it's ugly, right? So challenge is pretty nice, a pretty nice saying. So first of all, you're in a dev meeting, so don't be afraid to be too technical, right? So that's what that's why we're here.
Brilliant. So then, just a few observations maybe that popped up during my short, I have to still say, short stay with the project. And just to say it in advance, it could be that I'm still something missing, right? Because I was very busy the last 2 months to get features up and running together with Robert. So there might be the one or the other place where I missed something, and it could have been done in a different way. So the main contribution, I guess, Robert mentioned it already, was on the one hand the multi-currency stuff. So this is very flexible. Currencies are created basically. I mean, you can transfer, for example, cash dollars to Uganda shilling account, right? So this is handled basically with a little bit of magic on the backend side, so that everything works well. And the only thing that we introduced there is an exchange rate, right? So that the reports, the accounting then still works, and we get a balanced output there.
Okay, so
that's the whole purpose of the system.
Yeah, so the exchange rate you're talking about, is it something that is configured, or do you fetch it online from somewhere?
Yeah, so that my preference would have been to have this updated in batches. I think once per day would have been enough, and there is this, I think it's called open currency or something, or open exchange rate. And they have a free tier, and they have a very up-to-date exchange rate, which would be enough for the system. But we went another route, so there is basically the exchange rates are calculated on the fly. So there is still room for improvement there. So just imagine you you're transferring $1,000 to Uganda shilling account, the exchange rate will be calculated while you enter the values in the system. So there is no reference to any external entity or external web service.
Okay, so
right?
so you have it configured somewhere in the system and just simply updated it on a timely base.
Right.
Okay.
So and I have to say, okay, this works now, but there is probably still room for improvement there. So just to avoid mistakes by users and so on. So at the moment they have to be a little bit careful in that part, but it's a start, right?
Yeah. Did you already contributed that code back to us, or is there plans to contribute it back?
I'll take that on. Right now, the way we started this was to fork out the Mifos X code base and deploy it on our own development server. So the version that we have actually is not the same version that the community has. But I had discussion with Esther to share it to a wider community. And last week's meeting, I actually made that clear that when we're done, we are able to have whatever changes we have done with the API extension and even the front end available for the community.
That would be awesome, because we're currently working on designing the multi-currency part, and as far as I understood, you at least hit the 80% solution now. So it would only take us the effort of making it to 20% on the fly, maybe using open exchange rate or something on a daily basis job, right? So so we could take your work and just bring it to the next stage, and then you could get it back in and can use the code that we're then supply, so that you simply can also have benefit on what we're doing then. So that would be pretty nice.
Right.
And as I heard right, you also have done some stuff for closing end of year dates, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the same here on our side. So that would be
opening balances. So we did something on opening balances.
Mm-hmm.
And we have also actually went deeper into penalties, late payment interest penalties. We actually done extensive amount of work along that line as well.
Okay. So sorry for interrupting you, Alex.
No problem. The last thing that Robert said, the extension that we did there, for example, is we integrated a SMS notification. So that was another job created. There is this SMS module inside of Mifos, but for the moment, just to get going, we created just basically a separate module for that. And but that's just one of these additional features that we added. So, but I don't consider them like a real added value, right? Maybe this would be especially that SMS feature. I'm not sure if that could have been done with the existing stuff, but it was just I had a short time frame, so I had to get it going. The other thing that we added, and that might maybe be of value to a broader community, was we extended the permission system. So at the moment, the permissions are basically entity-based in a way, so that if I get a create permission on loans, then basically I get access to all the loans in the system. And right, that's a good idea, Robert.
I can show you while he's talking, just so long as my screen is still visible.
Your screen is visible.
Right.
Yep.
So And in the case of Finem, we had another requirement that went a little bit deeper. So the next step would have been like to have basically a row-level permission system, so based on entity IDs or something like that. But it went even further, saying so it's there are rules actually to allow users to create loans only in a limited range of principal amount. So that was one requirement, and what we did, or how we did it, was basically what you see here is form-based, and it seems to be very strict, but actually what happens behind the scenes is we are using a small scripting language actually, and you can think of it like JavaScript, but not as powerful. Maybe some of you know it already. It's used in a lot of projects. It's called ML2. What we do here is basically creating script expressions and to define these rules. And the objects that can be used inside of that script snippets, I would say, or I would call them, are based on basically what you have inside of the commands. So in the commands you have resource IDs. You have the entity that you are changing. Let's take, for example, a loan create command. With the loan create command, you have the action basically that you are using, which is create. You have the entity. You have no resource ID because there is actually still no resource ID, but you have a lot of attributes attached to the command. For example, the user who creates the loan. So what we can do with the scripting or the scripted permissions or the rule-based permissions is now decide, for example, if we update a loan, we can check the principal amount, everything that you see in the database tables, basically, because before we manipulate the data, we just load the entity from the database and everything that is associated and can be of value, like let's say staff, if that would be necessary. But at the moment, we are basically limiting it to user IDs, right? So there is, for example, one rule that says the user that created the loan is not allowed to approve the same loan, and this is expressed also with this small scripting language. Right, and this is stored in the database. It's very similar to the existing permissions, but we put it in a separate table so that we don't get a mix-up there. Also for future updates, and for that we extended the internal parts. I mean, let's say we tried to limit the code changes to a minimum. If I remember correctly, the changes, I mean, apart from the implementation that has to deal with loading the rules from the database and all that stuff, the part that is added to the core sources of Mifos is just a handful of lines. So, and right now it worked. We had a little bit of bugs, so I think we fixed them now all. But this is working quite well now, and I think performance-wise it should also be able to handle quite some load.
Yeah, so this sounds pretty interesting for us too, because we are already planning some what we call data authorization, right? And this fits at least in some of the stuff we're also looking to. So do you load these rules into the permissions system, or do you really load them by hand after Spring Security has jumped in?
It's basically after Spring Security has jumped in. So this is there is I don't know, I don't remember it by heart now, but there is one place in basically where the command handling happens. There's one central place where the app user is loaded. And that proved to be the one place where it's best to place this security check.
Yeah.
So there's one place where the normal permissions, let's call it the original permissions, are checked. So these are checked first, and then our extension jumps in. So this is how it's done at the moment. My preference would have been like to integrate it as an extension to Spring Security, but I couldn't figure out in time how to do that. And I think Mifos in that place also doesn't follow all the API recommendations of Spring Security.
That's right. So that's something we're already thinking about, having it a bit different than we currently have it, because right now we're also not able to use expression language for the permissions there, right? So you also could have some nice expressions in your permissions that you also can load from somewhere, but that's something that we're currently not really supporting. So we do most of that security stuff by hand instead of really relying on Spring doing it, right? So it would be interesting to see that piece of code just to understand what you're talking about, right? So I like the idea of using a scripting language there, because it's pretty simple to store and pretty simple to also execute, right? And yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my first idea, I have a tendency to go nuts with these things. My first idea was because I use it in another project, was to use rules. I mean, a complete full-featured rule engine, but that's just complete overkill, of course. Right? So, but still, I mean, I would have a place for rules, but that's in another place.
Yeah, and that's something we also maybe should talk about, because we're also having two things on our plate for this year. One is integrating a rules engine, and the other one is integrating a workflow engine, right? So we're already talked about possibilities to get rules in place, because if we're talking about a rule-based engine, then we also would choose rules. And for the workflows, we talked about activity as a engine, which we could then also have built in, or maybe someone else could provide it externally, right? So that's so if you're starting to put effort in there, just simply let us know so that we can support you there a bit.
Okay, brilliant. Because now that we are talking about rules, this is on my list of science fiction points, right? The rules thing could be a nice choice also for all the accounting rules, because at the moment, you know, all the basically the business logic of Mifos and the core functionality, like stupid stuff like loading data from the database and all that, is like very mixed together in the code, and sometimes it's very, very hard to find your way around just to change one minor thing, you know, because you have a lot of validation functions that has basically nothing to do with just extending the entities. For example, we extended the staff entities recently, right? And there is just a lot of validation logic around that makes it very hard to just do a simple thing like adding a second mobile phone number. And if that would be separated, but I'm just saying this is, of course, I understand this is a bigger effort here. If that would be separated out in a rules engine like rules, then that would make life a lot easier. Right?
Yeah, that's where I agree, right? So we currently we try to have some clear cut between business logic and storing logic, but sometimes, given the time frames we have and the contributions and the people we have, right, sometimes it's a bit mingled. So you will find some things that you would not expect to be in a storing area simply because it's business logic, right? You would find it in the storing area and vice versa, right? And we're still looking for two ways here. So the first way would be have something simple to use, right? So I think rules could become an overkill for some small MFIs that do not really have any knowledge about that, right? So we still need to find a way how we could introduce simple rule handling without really the knowledge of doing something. And the second part would then be really allow using rules in the sense of rules is talking about, right? So really an expression language, or maybe in other cases, really an Excel file that you could simply upload where your rule is defined, and you could simply say, this is what I'm looking for.
Exactly, and that last thing that you said is exactly, that would be the entry-level approach to the rules engine, because the feeding rules with a simple Excel sheet is doable, I think. And I think for this audience, Excel is like a natural way of handling stuff. So that could be an easy way. And then for the more advanced users, I mean, you can use rules. You know that yourself in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So as said, so if you start thinking about bringing rules into the system, just let us know, because we already started wrapping our head around it. And I think so we're good.
Cool. So the security stuff was basically I think one of the bigger things that we added in this short time frame. And I have some other things that I came across during development. I mean, the entanglement with the validation rules and the storing logic, that was one thing. As I understood, deep inside of the storing logic, there is a mix between using the persistence abstraction with JPA and Hibernate, and then you have mixed in these SQL statements, which tie the whole system to MySQL. So I'm pretty sure that everyone is aware of that.
So that's something I already stumbled across too, right? So I'm started volunteering for this project a year ago, and became the chief architect 6 weeks ago, right? And one thing that annoyed me a lot was simply seeing MySQL specific statements instead of at least some JPQL or Hibernate query language, right? Because now it's not really possible to change a database, or we need to start writing database detection algorithms and then trying to get the correct SQL statement in place. So that's something which is still on our plate, just to start refactoring that and use either JPQL, right, if it's feasible, or Hibernate query language, whoever cares about that, right? Or simply try to use most of that stuff which is already built in, right? So you could, there's a lot of, I think the main reason maybe was because somebody thought he's better in writing performant SQL statements than relying on something like Hibernate or JPQL. But the last years, I'm worked heavily with JPQL and Hibernate, and they really know their business better than I do. And I'm a DBA for Oracle and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, there are so many people trying to get better performance by simply putting in the right pieces where I never thought of it maybe could be, right? Then that there's some refactoring, but that's a lot of work, right? I think you saw that we have hundreds of SQL statements written specifically for MySQL.
Yes.
And that's something that we have on our plate, and we will maybe start something for volunteers there, right? That some volunteer could start, or maybe have some dedicated sprint sometime in the future where we find the time to do that.
Right. I mean, a lot would already be done. There is basically in every database-facing service, there is at some place a function that just returns a schema string.
Yeah.
Right. So, and if that would be eliminated, because basically you have the structure of your entities already defined with the annotations of JPA.
Yes.
If there would be a way to eliminate that one, because just a couple of days ago I extended, as I said, the staff entity, and it took me like I have to admit hours to get this going, just because it's very easy to mix up the database schema when it's inside of a string, because there is no way to debug this then,
yes.
other than deploying it and finding out that it breaks.
Yeah.
But that's just a side note, so everyone is aware of that. I had another thing, because as I understood now, okay, Mifos is meant to be like a platform with partners and extended for different situations in different countries. And I was wondering about this is just from the project structure, right? At the moment, I mean, inside the code, actually, it's very nice. So everything is organized in basically modules and different packages and applied with a lot of patterns, best practices, and so on. So this is all fine and nice, but in the moment that I want to extend the system and okay, what we are using here is a complete maybe backwards incompatible fork of Mifos. But it would be easier for a partner to extend the system if the project structure would already be broken down in modules. I mean, really separate projects. I mean, again, total overkill would be to have it in OSGI modules, right? But just separating these different things and not having. There is an added value in having the project like it is like now. And I'm talking about the Mifos provider folder, right? Basically everything that is below that.
Yeah, so I can jump in there too, right? So I've started proposing how we can start taking out a sword, right, and cutting everything into pieces, because right now, as you said, if you want to really do some extensions, you need to get the complete code, then you need to do your changes where you want them, and then you're off the road, right? So because you then got your own fork, and there's a lot of stuff that you maybe do not want to give back because it's your intellectual property, right, and not ours, and it's pretty specific, or maybe your client won't let you contribute that. So what we're currently planning is separating out the core modules and the more let's call it portfolio things, right? And having a core module which will cover the journal and the accounting principles and also some of the commands and the infrastructure that we're using internally, and all the rest will then be separated modules. And beside that, we also want to offer a simple API on the server side that you could simply say, oh, I want to create my own module doing something totally different, but I want to reuse some of your work, right? So that you could simply use an API level instead of getting the complete jar or whatever with all the code and all the implementation in it, just simply having a small API jar that allows you to interact with us. And what we're currently not sure about is, as you mentioned, right, so OSGI would be overkill, I agree, right? So I see multiple ways doing it. So one way would simply relying on a manual process. So once you wrote your module, you simply need to drop it into the weapon folder and start it, and then it will be picked up because it's on the right place. Or try to find a simple way of providing modules. There's some Java plugin frameworks that are pretty straightforward, or maybe manipulating the class path on our own, because we already have some. It would be possible to simply create some own class path loader that simply takes a look at specific folders and loads what's in there. But I personally do not like playing around with class loaders, because typically this means hell at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's I totally agree. I mean, what I can point. I mean, there is. I have other projects, and what I just mentioned in the chat right now has the same problem domain, but it's not a microloan framework. This is just plain e-commerce project. Maybe some of you know that already, but they have a similar problem domain. So what they provide is they provide the core business logic for starting an e-commerce site, like Magento, for example, right? And now there is a similar project like we have here with the Mifos platform. You have different countries, different rules, so different implementations. And with the e-commerce platform, you have different products and different rules to present them, and so on and so forth. Now, what they did is, and they are not using anything other than, this is a Maven-based project, but that's just a detail. What they did is they provide all the core functionalities as modules. Sometimes they call it plugins or extensions or whatever. They have their own architecture, so that's also, I consider this also a detail. But what they have is, so they have, for example, payment system extensions. So there is PayPal, so this is a separate module, for example. Now, when you start your e-commerce project, you start basically from scratch, and the only thing that you do is basically you create a plain Maven project, and you just pull in the plugins and the modules and the extensions that you need.
Yeah.
Right. So and then with that you have complete freedom, and no OSGI and no fiddling around with the class path.
Right. So that's something that that would be one of the first steps I would take too. Right. Simply having some Maven plugins that you, or Maven. In our case, we use Maven underlying because we're using Cradle, so there wouldn't be that much difference, right? So you could simply pull in the information that we're providing in separate jar files at the end of the day, right? And pulling in that stuff and just simply using the way then you would like to use it, right? So I'm sure we will stay with Spring just to answer the the question of Troy, right? So I do not see any benefit for us to go somewhere else right now, right? But once we're using the modules, you also could simply use some other technique of spinning a server up than using Spring.
Right, but there's nothing. This is not speaking against Spring, because actually Broadly, for example, is also using Spring. So it's just the fact that, for example, let's take, for example, a payment plugin like for PayPal. So you could create then for Mifos a starter project, right? That has PayPal included.
Yes.
But when you fork that, you do not fork the core modules. You fork that assembly, just that starter project.
Yeah.
This is basically just a reference to all the modules that you have. And then if you don't want PayPal included, well, then just remove it from your project definition. That's all. And that has nothing to do with Spring. So Spring is happily living inside of Mifos product. So just to clear that up.
So I think that's where we're heading to, right? Simply allowing you to pick and choose. So we will have a core component that simply will take care that at least the nitty bits that we need are there, and then you could simply start picking, choose what you really want to do. And I think the simple approach because currently if you fork our system and you start changing it, right, you're pretty soon will come in backwards incompatibility issues, because you start messing around with stuff that's definitely not useful for us or any kind of real better contribution to it, because it's, as I said, your own property, right? And so that's what we're also currently working on. So I'm currently preparing a roadmap where I simply write down the things I see which are more immediate and things that are more long-term, right? So that we can start creating that platform ecosystem that we're talking about.
Brilliant. That sounds really, really awesome. So, and then I just have
Alex?
Yeah? Hello?
Yeah, you might want to touch on the issue of the date time
Yes,
the challenges
yes.
that you had.
This is something really. This was really a challenge. So as you know, you have the possibility to configure the time zone in the tenant system in the tenant database, right? So, and we came across some really annoying issues because Robert was located in Brisbane, Australia. I'm sitting in Portugal. Then we have Esther in Switzerland, and then there was this developer from Ukraine, and then the guy from Romania. So we are all in different time zones, and then reports developers in Uganda. And we had this really annoying challenge that the browser has, of course, its own time zone settings, right? So that is dependent on the desktop settings of the user who is facing the system. Now, the backend, I mean the tenant database, we settled now to set it to the time zone of Kampala, because this is where the main stakeholders are sitting. And the reason for that is also there are time-based jobs that are scheduled to calculate the interest rates and the payment cycles and all that stuff, right? So these maintenance jobs that are running. And these are time-based. And of course, for the stakeholders, it is important that they expect that these jobs are running midnight from their perspective, right? So, okay, so we have to have one time zone, no problem. But now we have these people in different time zones and sitting in front of the system and presented with HTML and JavaScript, and we have to translate that. And of course, for the user who is sitting there, let's take Robert in Australia. He has a time difference to me of 10 hours. But when he enters, for example, let's say a join date for a staff member, then he enters already basically compared to what is defined in the tenant system, a date that is tomorrow, right? Because he might be already in the next day. And there is a lot of code bloat that we have right now, and I'm still not sure if there are ways to do a better job there. But there is a lot of code bloat that we need to apply to translate the local time zone of the user, I mean the browser time zone, to the thing that is in the defined in the tenant system, and that is I don't know. I'm a big fan of having just one time zone in the system, but this generated a lot of problems and hard to trace down bugs.
Okay, so you're talking about currently that if somebody is entering a time and date in a different time zone, then it's not correctly translated, right?
Right, because I mean, if you don't touch anything else with the JavaScript frameworks, it doesn't matter what you're using. I mean, we are using here AngularJS, but the date handling is basically just plain, or was just plain JavaScript. So, of course, if you say new date, then it's your new date in Brisbane, Australia. But if you submit the data, the validation rules in the tenant system are then applied to the time zone of Kampala. And that makes things very, very hard to handle.
Yeah, got it.
Before I transmit, I have to translate the time zone back to Kampala. So when the user logs in, I have to somehow communicate with the server to find out which time zone the server is in. That's the first thing, but okay, that's not hard to do. At the moment, we have that hard-coded, I have to admit that. You know, then for every single date transaction, we have to translate that, and that's a lot of places. For example, the join date for the staff, but there are other places where basically the creation dates of the entities are also transmitted from the client. And at least these could be generated on the server side, because then at least those don't have to be translated. You know, that this sums up a lot. There's a lot of code handling only that issue.
Yeah.
So, for example, if the time zones would be stored in the database, that would help already. But I don't know if that is then if that could be handled differently. But I'm just saying, like it is right now, this is really, and we still the last bugs that we have are actually date related.
Yeah, I think typically the system should be able to simply figure out the right dates, right? So what we're currently lacking, I guess, is the point that we also support a time zone for date formats.
Yeah.
Right, and I think that would maybe help if we simply use the ISO 8601 for dates, so that you could simply specify a date, and this is how typically also JavaScript or Java dates or the Joda time dates typically will react. If you really have a time zone in it, then it would understand what we're talking about.
Exactly, because at the moment the dates are from the REST API. What I receive from the REST API is basically Java, an array of numbers.
Yes.
Right. So it's a sorted array, but actually it doesn't help a lot, because if you translate it back to, there is this stupid problem with JavaScript dates where the month is offset by 1.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so you have to do a -1 to get it right. So there is, it doesn't really help. The array doesn't help in reducing the code. And if it would be already in ISO format, I could use a library like Moment.js and just keep it doing what it does best.
Yeah. Okay, I noted that. So talking about the ISO, then it would be pretty nice.
Right.
Okay, guys. So I'm sorry, but we need to stop. We're 11 minutes over now.
Yep.
All right. Thank you so much, Marcos, and the rest of the guys for giving us the chance to talk you through what's going on our side.
It was good talking and seeing it, right? Okay, guys. So.
Yeah. Thank you, Robert and Alexander.
Yeah.
Oh, and I was just going to say, Marcus, yeah, like let's find ways to keep Alexander and the rest of your team, Robert, being able to contribute more actively to the community as a whole, because they've got some great feedback and experience on the platform now. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, all. So I wish you a nice day, and we hear us in 2 weeks, right?
Thank you for the meeting again, and thanks for listening. Hope I didn't bore anyone.
No.
Thank you for the presentation.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.